That's good. Alrighty, let's keep going. All right, for our next one, we have that for $60, there is an additional 10% charge when the coat is bought on credit. What is the total cost to a credit customer? So they're gonna add on the 10% for the $60 coat. So we're gonna have another percent problem. So we're gonna again use the part over whole proportion. The total cost was $60, so that's gonna be your whole. Now, notice what the question is asking. The question is asking, what is the total cost? So I want to ask you guys, do you think we should use the percent as 10 or should we use something else for the percent?
You use the percent as a decimal.
Well, we are going to use, well, no, we don't have to change it to a decimal. You only have to change it to a decimal when you're doing simple interest. When you're in the percent proportion, you're good to just leave it as 10.
Okay.
But my question is, when I set up the proportion, right? When we set up our proportion, we have 60 here, we have 100 here.
You mean
My
110?
Okay, so we're gonna use 110%. Now, why are we using 110%? Because this is an additional 10% charge, which means if you just put 10%, the value you're gonna get here is just gonna be the charge. It's not gonna be the total cost. You would have to then grab that charge, add it to the $60, then you have your answer. But instead, you can save yourself that trouble. And instead you say, well, if I add 100% plus the 10% additional charge, I get 110%. And that's going to give me my total cost. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Cool. So we're back to our usual, which is we're going to cross multiply and then divide. So the total cost will equal to 60 times 110, everything divided by 100. 0 goes away with 0, 0 goes away with 0. So the total cost will equal to 6 times 11, which is going to equal to $66. And I put the decimal with the 2 zeros simply because we're talking money, but even if you left it as just 66, you're perfectly fine. There's no problem with that. Okay. So again, whenever you're working with a percent and they mention that there's like an additional fee or an additional charge or an additional tax or whatever they want to call it, whenever you see the word additional, you're like, okay, I need to add that to 100%. That's my percent.
Because when you do it with just 10%, you only get 6.
Yeah, because the 6 is how much you have to add to it. That's like the charge, but that's not the total cost.
All right.
Whenever you see that you have a problem with like, oh, it's a discount or it was on sale or you had a coupon or whatever, that's the opposite. Instead of adding to 100%, you're going to subtract from 100%. So let's say you had a problem that said like, oh, you have a t-shirt is $20, but it's 10% off. So then you would say, okay, well, 100% minus 10 is 90. 90 is the percent that you're going to put into your proportion. Is that clear?
Yep.
Cool. Okay. A painter needs 5 gallons of paint to finish a house. He has 3 quarts and 1 pint. How much more paint does he need? So this is a little bit of like different units. So they mentioned gallons, quarts, and pints. So this is kind of testing if you know your conversions, and hopefully you know them. So just to state the conversions, I'm just going to write them down on the side, then we'll deal with them. So the conversions, 1 gallon is equal to 4 quarts. And that's kind of easy to remember because quarts sounds like quarters and it's like a dollar, like there's 4 quarters and $1. 1 quart is equal to 2 pints. So these are the 2 conversions we're going to need. We need a total of 5 gallons. He has 3 quarts and 1 pint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change that pint into a quart, add it to the 3 quarts, and then try to figure out how much am I missing from the 5 gallons. So I'm going to change everything to quarts first. So we're going to have to change these 5 gallons. We're going to need to figure out how many quarts that's going to be. And 1 gallon we said was 4 quarts. So let's figure out what that's going to give us. We're going to cross multiply and divide. And it turns out that we are going to need a total of 20 quarts of paint. Are we all good up to that point?
Yep.
Okay. Now we know how many quarts we need. So now let's figure out how much does he actually have. So he actually has, well, we need to convert this 1 pint. Well, that one's easy. 1 quart, I hope you guys can do this one on your head. 1 quart is 2 pints. So how many quarts do you have if you only have 1 pint?
Wait, hold on. Can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah.
Yeah, repeat the question.
That's okay. We know this is true, right? 1
Okay.
quart, 2 pints. So 1 quart, 2 pints. If you only have 1 pint, how many quarts do you have?
4.
1.
Wait.
Half. I mean half.
Half. There you go. You have half. You have half.
Huh.
Because if 2 then makes 1, but you only got 1, that means you only got half of it.
Yeah.
So this right here, this is what he has. He has 3 quarts and 1/2 of a quart. So in reality, he has 4.5 quarts. So the question is, how much more does he need? Well, he needs 20. He already has 4.5. So let's subtract that. I'm going to add a 0 here because I'm going to need it.
I have a question. How did you get 4.5 quarts?
I'm sorry, it's 3.5. You're right. I'm done. Sorry. Thank you for that. So we know how much he needed. We know how much he has. Let's just subtract to see how much is missing. So I'm going to subtract here. This is going to turn into a 1. This is going to turn into a 10, but then that becomes a 9. So this becomes a 10. So that'll be 5 decimal, and that'll be 6, and that'll be 1. So he's missing 16.5 quarts. All of your answer choices are in gallons. So we need to change that back to gallons. Let's do that. So we have 16.5 quarts. So we know 16 quarts. And this 0.5 quarts. Now, what did we say was 0.5 quarts?
1 pint.
1/2.
1 pint.
1/2.
So we already know this is just 1 pint. So already you can eliminate one of your answer choices. You can eliminate A because A doesn't have the 1 pint. Now we just need to figure out how many quarts, how many gallons are in 16 quarts. So I want you guys to tell me, how many gallons do I have if I have 16 quarts?
4.
I have 4. Very good. I have 4 gallons because 16 divided by 4 is 4. So your final answer is that you need 4 gallons and 1 pint in order to be able to paint this house. So I know this one kind of was like bouncing back and forth between conversions. So let me just kind of rewind and re-explain. So step number 1, I wrote down my conversions because I knew I was going to need them. So that was step number 1. Step number 2 was to convert the number of gallons that he needs. I converted that to quarts. Step number 3, I determined how many quarts does he already have. And step number 4 was to subtract and figure out how many is he missing. And the last step, number 5, was to convert what he was missing, converting it to gallons and pints. So 5 steps. Are we okay with that one? Is there anything that confuses you?
I'm
How you
kind
do
of
the gallon?
Sorry?
I was asking how you get a 4 gallon. How you convert it?
The 4 gallons came from the fact that 16 quarts, 1 gallon is equal to 4 quarts. So if I divide this by 4, I'm going to get 4 gallons. Because we're going from a small unit to a bigger unit, so you're going to divide and you're going to end up dividing by 4. Alrighty. Any other questions on this problem that throws you off, that confuses you, that you want me to go back to?
nope.
We're okay? Okay. Alrighty.